Growing up, my family was very small. My parents divorced when I was 7, and my dad and his side of the family kind of separated themselves from us. And on my mom's side, there wasn't much of a concept of family. Unfortunately, both of my grandparents were both war orphans from World War II and hadn't really been raised with a family and thus hadn't really managed to share any kind of shared values or concept of what a family should be with my mom and her brothers. So that was my reality for the first 15 years of my life. Just the 3 of us against the world, nobody else to really rely on. When I was about 15, my mom decided that she wanted to have a better relationship with her parents for both herself and for us. So she encouraged both my brother and I to reach out to my grandparents. Because they lived in France, near Switzerland, we couldn't really just come by for the weekend and go see them. So she encouraged us to write an email. So for the next couple of days, I'd come home from school, I'd do my homework, and I'd just sit there. What was I to write to these people that were essentially strangers to me? They may be my grandparents by blood, but I'd only ever really gotten Christmas cards or birthday cards from them. They cared about us, but in their own way, and not that I could really feel that at that time. So anyhow, after a couple of days, it was a Friday, I wrote an email just on that test that I had completely not a good time. And the swim meet I'd had the weekend before. Not really expecting an answer, I just sent it and left it. A couple of days later on the Wednesday, I got a response from my grandpa. And that was just the start of a connection that I never knew I needed, but I realized was necessary for me growing up. Having been able to kind of grow up without a family and then develop a family throughout my years, I really came to appreciate that there was a lot of it that we don't necessarily think about. For those of you that maybe have had a close family your whole life, that you just take for granted, and a lot of values and connections, and people there to support you. So that's why today I'll be talking to you about the sustainability of familial relationships, in particular intergenerational relationships, how important it is to be in contact with not only just your parents and aunts and uncles, but also your grandparents. To do this, I will first be going over why this is an issue that has been growing over the last couple of decades, how this affects us growing up and makes us into individuals that aren't as well suited in a society. And then I'll be going over a very simple and effective solution to be able to deal with this problem once and for all. Our world is a rapidly changing world. Technology and pandemics and lots of factors that are constantly changing, and it is often that we will kind of let things fall to the side. Unfortunately, family is generally one of those. In a study done by Carl Pilmer, professor of human development at Cornell University, of over 1,300 students, he found that 27% of them were estranged from at least one family member. Wow. So that would be roughly 4 people here, or 3 or 4 people, that have at least one family member that you don't talk to. And this was for a variety of reasons. One of them was just busy schedules. Again, in a rapidly changing world with a very difficult time, most of us work 1 or 2 jobs while being in school. And what happens is we juggle many things. We're juggling family, relationships, friendships, school, work. And unfortunately, sooner or later, you can't juggle all those balls, and you'll set one to the side. And unfortunately, that is often family. Another study done in the UK in 2015 actually found that 54% agreed with the statement, estrangement or family breakdown is common in our family. So a bit like Priya mentioned, the concept of forgiveness. Too often we'll just set our family to the side because of a comment that was misunderstood. And another big factor they found was geography. A lot of us move now compared to previous generations where you'd always stay in one spot. In some cases, you can see that estrangement here, so you can see from negative behavior, represents almost 46% of those cases. So there are people you will estrange for a valid reason, because that could be physical trauma, psychological trauma, but many of these are still unaccounted for in terms of no fixed reason for letting your family fall a bit to the side. Now that we've seen how much of an issue that this can be in our life, is we can compare our families to the roots of a sturdy tree. If anchoring us in the soil of life and providing the nourishment to properly grow. But if we don't have those sturdy roots going down and picking up all the nutrients necessary for us to grow, we'll never be able to grow to our full potential. Studies on family narrative sharing in young adults and adolescents has found that those who know more about their family history tend to be less anxious, have a higher self-esteem, a higher locus of control, better family functioning dynamics, and less behavioral problems. These are the hallmarks of a great individual society, being able to interact with others and just being able to interact with others. So as you can see here, this was one of the tests they did. So they found that a lot of those that didn't know FACTS, the source of your name, you know where your parents were married, they found a correlation, just as you can see here, with other psychological tests that prove how necessary a family is. Because a family is a bit like a warm blanket that you can come home to, and that'll cover you and give you a world of comfort and connection. It's a hot shower after a stressful day, washing away all the stress of the day and all the problems in life. Further studies have shown that sharing of familial memories and intergenerational memories, so all of the facts and stories that your grandparents and parents tell you, is linked with positive mental health and well-being. Home is where the heart is. It's a very famous proverb that I'm sure we all know, but we don't necessarily think about it, but we can see how intrinsically our emotional well-being and our home is. While family has these many, as you can see, not having the family connections will lead to many issues, a family is a bit like a roller coaster. You won't always get along with them. Sometimes you'll hate them. I spent 10 years of my life hating my brother, but I got him a job 2 months ago working at the same company. So yeah, but it's a roller coaster. You'll have your good moments, you'll have your bad moments, but as long as you stick to it, you'll have fun at the end.
Wow.
Now that we've seen why this is an issue and how it's been developing compared to the past, and how this affects us in a way that we don't necessarily think about on a day-to-day basis, I'll be giving you just a nice and easy solution on how to deal with this problem. Again, coming back to the idea that we're in a constantly evolving world, and a bit like a bird migrates as the seasons change, we must adapt to the world that we now have in front of us. What I may tell you might be against common wisdom, but researchers have found one of the best ways to be closer to your family is through online connections. Most of us live very far. We may be foreign students, we may be just moved away for school or for better opportunities. Personally, my grandparents, again, live 15-hour travel time. My mom, 6-hour travel time to get to her. I wouldn't be able to really interact with any of them without having online connection. Recent studies have found that even giving a virtual high five gives you the same emotional benefit as a high five in person. If ever you've seen your niece or nephew or a little kid on a phone, they'll always reach out to you. And if you reach back out to them, they'll be just as happy as if you were actually there. Our smartphones breathe a life into family conversations, making every text and call a heartbeat in our digital connection. They've become important to reach out to family that may be too far or maybe have health concerns that you wouldn't be able to see them in person. Just a bit like during the pandemic, you had to, we saw Zoom become a huge thing because we couldn't see them in person. But again, common wisdom tells us that we should get away from our phones, that we need to relish that social, that human interaction. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but through our screens and pixels, we can share laughter, we can share tears, we can share their mundane, everyday life, day to day. And we get to create a parallel world where distance isn't an issue, it's just an afterthought. In conclusion, we have seen how we have often in this generation left our family connections to the side too easily. We have seen how this is an issue that, while we may not see at first glance, it affects us very deeply within our mind. And we've explored a very simple solution here. As you can see, more than 80% of every age category says that going online allows us to have a better connection. The sustainability of intergenerational relationships is not just a choice, it's a responsibility that we owe to ourselves in the future. Going back to my original story, after that email, since then I've remained in general contact with my grandparents. I learned that my granddad built the largest bridge in Congo. He was an engineer who went down there and lived for many decades and got to explore a lot of the world like that. I learned that when he retired, he became a senator representing all of the French citizens in Canada in the French Senate. But most importantly, I had somebody additional that I could rely on. And I further expanded that to my uncles and aunts that I didn't really speak to. And we have rebuilt our family from nothing to a nice little network now. So, to conclude this all, I'd just like to challenge you all to go home, make an effort to talk to your parents if you live with them, to ask them how their day was, to talk about your day, about how difficult and how much stress we had on getting ready for this speech. I challenge you to text or call a family member that you may have talked to in a while and you can't really remember why. And you just fell to the side. I challenge you to go home and to rekindle that little spark of family connections you got and turn it into the roaring bonfire that it should be. As the novelist Jane Howard once said, call it a clan, call it a network, call it a tribe, call it a family. Whatever you call it, whoever you are, you need one.